I'm going to tell you guys a secret. I think my mom is a worshiper of sun god Nika. Okay, that's not entirely true. Um, so, my mom has a habit of collecting suns, as in, uh, you know, wooden suns that you can hang in a window, or giant, wire made suns or stuff like that, metal ones, stuff like that, that you can, decorate and like hang in windows, and they, have like wind chimes or stuff like that on them, or just like big ones that she sticks along the back of our fence and things like that. We have a big one on the front of our house by our front door. Um, and she just collects them, and people give them to her. They're good gifts for her. My older niece has given her a couple that kind of like sit in our windows. Um, some of them it's just a sun, some of it's like a sun and a moon together, and things like that. And a lot of them are really nice. And I've told her I'm going to use those as props at some point in time. So that may still happen, just not today. Um, so today, I'm going to kind of talk about some of the random thoughts that I've had about Sun God Nika, and I've just been kind of keeping track of them, or they're ones that I've been thinking about a little bit more, given the most recent chapter and what could be coming in next week's chapter and subsequent chapters, depending on how this broadcast to the world goes. But before that, I had two things I wanted to show. So, I've shown this one before. The Sun God Nika Luffy Gear 5th appropriate colored one that I have. That's Luffy grabbing the lightning bolt that I got with some of my Christmas money. And then the other set that I got. That is Luffy and Shanks from Film Red doing their combo attack. Okay, so these came in two separate sets, or they're a set, but they were separate when you buy them. And fun fact, I went to the mall to look around and see if I could just find anything, because sometimes I just do that if I'm in that part of town. And I'm looking around, and there's like three stores in the mall that sell like figurines and stuff like that. One of them's GameStop. I bought the Nami figurine from there, and I bought this version of my Luffy there. But the other two that are in the mall, one is called Red Panda Candy, which sells a lot of figurines, but they also sell different kinds of candy and stuff. And then the other one is a place that's called Entertain Mart. And they're just like a nice big store. They have movies and CDs and comics and figurines and gaming stuff and post wall scrolls. That's where I've gotten these wall scrolls and stuff like that. And so the Entertain Mart had Shanks, and then Red Panda Candy had Luffy. So I'm like, well, I have to buy them now. It's like I have to buy them, so I bought them. Much to the owners of said store's happiness, because it meant they got money, and it meant that they were reunited. But so random stuff for that. But so kind of the way that this got started for random thoughts I've had about the Sun God Nika with Luffy and everything like that. So. As I have the habit of doing sometimes in some of the more Kuma-centric chapters that we've had recently, I've been using Winnie the Pooh quotes in regards to that, because Oda's done it himself. So I feel free to do that as well. And so there are two Winnie the Pooh quotes that I found that have to do with the sun or sunshine or something like that. And that I think that are very important when it comes to Luffy as well, in regards to him as a character, but also just like this representation of like Sun God Nika to the world, even if the vast majority of the world do not know that he exists. So one of them is, it never hurts to keep looking for sunshine. Now, bear in mind, I do not know who in Winnie the Pooh has said these things. They could come from Pooh, they could come from Christopher Robin, they could come from any of the other main casts, they could come from some of the additional cast that gets brought in, but So it never hurts to keep looking for sunshine. And in regards to Luffy, I kind of see that being that he will continuously try to find the fun in whatever it is that he's doing. And we saw that in the last chapter where he's, he had, just at the end of the previous chapter, he had, Kizaru pinned in one hand and a Gorosei being pushed back with the other while he's in his giant form. And then Kizaru tries to laser beam him, and Saturn tries to, stab him. And Luffy just decides to, okay, you guys are a symbol now. I'm making you a symbol, and then you're going to be flat, and then I'm going to spin you like pizzas, and then I'm going to throw you away. And it's just that's just Luffy's mind of, where can I find the fun in this? And we saw the same thing happen when he fought Kaido, where he's like, okay, I'm turning Kaido into a jump rope. And he did. Or I'm going to expand myself inside of Kaido and just mess with him that way. I'm going to shoot my hands through his eyes and make him open his mouth so I can get out. I'm going to swing Kaido around. Just all this other stuff that he does while he's fighting Kaido. It's Luffy having fun. And while he is aware of the fact that he is in the middle of this very serious battle with Kaido, and even currently in the middle of this very serious battle with Saturn and Kizaru, and he's kind of trying to buy time to a degree so that way the rest of Straw Hats can get away. As, unlike in Dressrosa, where it's Luffy was trying to defeat, trying to defeat Doflamingo before the timer ran out with the bird cage. And on Wano, on Onigashima, when he's fighting Kaido, he's trying to defeat Kaido before he can drop Onigashima on the Flower Capital, but also it's if they don't beat Kaido now, they're never going to beat him. And Luffy finds the fun in how he's fighting Kaido. And even before he gets to Gear 5th, he is kind of having fun a little bit in how he's fighting Kaido. Or in the way that him, Law, and Kid deal with, Big Mom throwing a giant fireball at them. And all of that. So there's a lot of those moments where even in very serious fights, Luffy will, to a degree, find the fun in it. Now, that doesn't mean that Luffy, every single fight, he will find the fun in. When everything was happening with Crocodile and Alabasta, Luffy was taking those fights against Crocodile fairly seriously, even though he did try to, eat Crocodile, and that didn't go well. And, even fights against Doflamingo and stuff like that. Luffy is aware of the fact that there is a time limit going on or something along those lines where he has to keep this serious. But now, even in Gear 5th, he's able to go between a little bit more of the serious side and a little bit more of the fun side and go back and forth a little bit with that, even with him being in Gear 5th. So that's kind of nice. And some of the other stuff that we've seen with that battle in the current chapters, and we'll see what happens in the next chapter in regards to the Gorosei showing up. And on that note, the other one, or one of the thoughts that I had for what Luffy could do, and someone else may have already pointed this out in a different video. I don't know. I don't think I've seen anyone else mention it, but it does go off of Luffy using Toon Force, and one of the things that he could do is okay, Luffy is still in his giant form right now for trying to fight and everything like that against the Gorosei, against Saturn. And if the 4 other ones show up, which seems to be what's happening, if the 4 of them show up, the other 4 show up, Luffy may end up having to do something else as a time delay strategy. Instead of okay, I'm having enough time fighting this guy who's not really taking damage, and now there's other ones that have shown up and that appeared in a similar fashion. I don't know if Luffy saw Saturn show up in the giant, demonic star circle thing that popped up, but I think Luffy saw part of that. So he may be able to put 2 and 2 together, even if the other Gorosei show up in their half demonic forms or something like that. The way that Saturn was when he appeared on the island, Luffy might be able to put, okay, these guys are friends of yours, I take it, type of a thing. And what Luffy might be able to do is, and obviously this would be more of a time delay strategy than something that could necessarily cause harm to the Gorosei, although it might be a bit painful for them, I don't know. Kaido seemed to be in pain when Luffy, expanded himself inside of Kaido, and then when he was jump roping him and everything like that. So just because he's using Toon Force, it doesn't mean that it doesn't hurt. Type of stuff against his opponents. Luffy might be able to make it if he had to do something with, like, I don't know, do something with Zoro where he used Toon Force on Zoro. Zoro may not feel pain because Luffy doesn't want Zoro to feel pain, whereas it's like he wants Kaido to feel pain when he expands inside of him. He wants him to feel pain when he's, jump roping with him or swinging him around, or, he wants Saturn to feel pain when he's punching him or turning him into a symbol and a pizza and spinning him around and everything like that. He wants, Saturn and Kizaru to feel pain at those instances. He wants his opponents to feel pain if he uses his Toon Force on them. As opposed to, like, he doesn't really want his allies to feel pain if he uses Toon Force on them, I would assume. But we haven't really seen him have to use his Toon Force abilities on any of his allies as far as I'm aware. But one of the things that could happen is Luffy could see the other 4 Gorosei and be like, okay, here's what I'm going to do. And he just, like, maybe grabs all 5 of them somehow and manages to, like, tie them all up into, like, a giant knot, like a giant, yarn ball of, knots and everything like that. And then just, like, chuck them aside or chuck them to the other side of the island where they're at least as far away from where his crew are as possible to a degree. Or at least from where he knows they are. And he could just, like, chuck them that way. And the 2 thoughts that I had for this, for why maybe he could do this, is, and it's Disney related and it's Snake related, from 2 separate movies that are like 2 to 3 decades apart in their making. So the first one is a reference to Robin Hood, the Disney's Robin Hood, with all the animals and everything like that. And in that they have Sir Hiss, who is of course like the snake, sidekick slash servant slash lackey for Prince John. And what happens is, of course, after the big, archery contest and the big kind of mini battle that happens where they destroy the fairgrounds, Prince John finds Hiss, and Hiss is drunk because he got stuck in a barrel of ale, because they could get away with that in the 80s, or the late 70s into the 80s when that movie was made. They could get away with having a drunk snake in a barrel of ale. Censorship rules are weird. And he gets angry with Hiss, and he just, like, ties Hiss up around, like, a flagpole or something like that that's there, and Hiss is just stuck there. And I'm like, yeah, Luffy could attempt to do that with the Gorosei, like, tie them all up in that type of a, set. I don't think from what we saw, none of the Gorosei seem to have, like, snake forms, but what Luffy could do is, like, take Saturn's legs, because he's a spider, like, take Saturn's legs, use Toon Force on them to, like, tie up all the Gorosei, and then tie them all up inside of the knots themselves, and tie the knots around each other and stuff like that, and just, like, turn them into this giant ball of, like, I don't know, rubber bands or something like that, and then just gets thrown away. And the other thought that I had, because it's like, okay, it's one thing for, like, them to, like, kind of bounce back from, like, being injured, but that's a little bit of a different type of a hindrance than them just, Saturn regenerating his arms or legs from when he got hit by Kuma, or being able to regenerate after taking certain amounts of hits from Luffy. And we don't know if, like, once you start injuring all the Gorosei at the same time, if that would be something where it's harder for them to regenerate. Because they may, as a lot of people have stated, do they have, like, a shared amount of stamina and healing factor that they can all draw on at the same time? But if one of them is injured and the other ones are not, then that one can heal a lot faster. But if they're all injured, it may just take longer for them to heal. And, I mean, lots of other people have pointed that out already. But what Luffy could do is, tie them up into a knot and throw them away. So it's like, that happened with Hiss and Robin Hood. And then the other one, because I still have Tarzan on the brain for making the Tarzan of Lucci versus Zoro reference right now, with Zoro being Tarzan and taking care of Lucci. Brendan, eat it out. So, where was I? Yes. Because I've been making comparisons between Zoro and Lucci as Tarzan versus Sabor in Tarzan. And Disney's Tarzan. So, the other thought that I had was that Luffy could do something where, and again, this involves a snake, where during the training sequence, training montage, growing up sequence for Tarzan, we see him like fight a snake and he like twists it up inside of trees so the snake can't get him. And such. I'm like, well, Luffy could attempt to do something like that with the Gorosei, where he like somehow traps them, and that would be a possibility. Again, I'm pretty sure some of this stuff other people have thought of as well, but this is just me compiling my thoughts into this video. But the other couple of things that I kind of thought of, or the other Winnie the Pooh quote that I had found, is the sun still shines even when it's hiding. And that made me think of the fact that for the past 800 or so years, to a degree, the concept of Nika, of sun god Nika, has kind of been in hiding to the world as a whole, to the One Piece world as a whole, because like it was passed down through the Buccaneers to, to Kuma, to Clap and to Kuma and stuff like that, and Kuma has passed that, that belief down to Bonnie. And then even within the Lunarians, it got passed down, given the fact that, King knew of Joy Boy, and if Joy Boy and Nika are supposed to be the same individual, or that like Joy Boy was the original incarnation of Nika, or that he was the original one to use the devil fruit, or some variation of that, we may get like the full story for how that works when we ever get like the Great Kingdom backstory, the Ancient Kingdoms, flashback and stuff like that. We might get that for how that exactly connects there. But as a whole, we are kind of under the impression that Nika and Joy Boy are at least mostly the same individual, or at the very least, maybe Joy Boy was this kind of disciple of Nika, and Nika granted him his powers, and that's what became the Gum Gum fruit, became the Hito Hito no Mi model sun god Nika, and that might be the case there. And so like that concept, that story has been like passed down, and even like the reference to the sun or the sun god have been in various other places. Like we know that the Shandians that are now in Skypiea, like they have that connection to the sun god, because like that's referenced back in Nolan's flashback, and then by Moose, by Calgar's daughter, and then even there's the symbol of the sun that is on the Alabasta flag that I mentioned a while ago when I talked about Alabasta and the Royals and Rulers series. For more of my thoughts on that, go watch that video. There's also, the Sun Pirates sigil that was their symbol, or still is their symbol and such. That there's that. And, the promise of being able to use the Noah to take the citizens of Fishman Island up to the surface, up to the sun, Otohime wanting them to be able to live in the sun. And that whole concept, and be equal with all the other ones that were there, with all the other races and stuff like that. And that concept, and I mean, that concept seems to have been passed down in some places over the years. And, there may even just be other islands within the One Piece world who have this belief in Nika. It's just, or a variation of Nika as a different version of a different sun god or something like that. But because of the fact that the world government has dominated the world for 800 years and has just gained more and more power with the 170 some nations or whatever it was, that's the current count of the world government, which given information that might be coming from Vegapunk in the next couple of chapters, that might be something that dwindles a bit, depending on how some of those revolutions go, and any other revolutions that start up within the One Piece world. So that's always a possibility. But one of the other things that happens, or that it could happen is, or that may have happened, is that that information has been passed down, but we know that the world government, mostly the Tenryubito, do their population extermination game, where they go to a country that is not affiliated with the world government, just like we saw in the God Valley flashback and Kuma's flashback, and for every 3 years over the course of the last 800 years or so, We don't know if that one was the last one just because of how catastrophically everything went wrong. But if that is the case, if that was the last one that they've done in the last 40 years, then that would kind of make sense. Just considering how catastrophically things had gone with Rox and Roger showing up and everything like that. Because we don't know if they've done that anymore over the last, 39 years or so. But we know that they would go to other kingdoms or other islands that had large enough populations so they could do this game, and they were non-world government affiliated islands and countries and such. And maybe some of those islands or those countries had been worshippers of Nika, or they found out that like this, however the Gorosei are set up, if they are ones where they are fully immortal, or where they at least are exceedingly long living because of powers given to them either by devil fruits or by Eem or by something else. If that is the case, then it could be that whichever sets of the Gorosei were around, 39 years ago, if it was still the current set that we have now, it could have been that they were like, when they're picking the island, they might have been like, we found that there is this country that worships the sun god. On top of that, they also refer to themselves as God Valley. That's a bit pretentious. That's a bit too pretentious in our opinion. We'll go there for this year's game. And that may literally be what's been happening, maybe not every single time over the course of the last, 800 years when they've done the population extermination game, but it may have been at least enough that it was able to wipe out a lot of those other countries, where like other times it may have been, this is just a random country, and if we get rid of them, then we can have whatever natural resources are on the island. That's one of the reasons they gave for going to God Valley. Then the world government can take over the island and have all those resources, and then like populate it with like whoever the heck they want, and then make that a new government island or something like that. Some variation of that. And it could be that, that did happen. Maybe over the course of 800 years, they found other countries or other groups that were not associated with the world government, but had an association with the sun god Nika. And that's why they went after them. And that's why they went to those specific islands. That could be a possibility there, in that regard. And other people, again, some of the stuff that I'm saying may be something that someone else has said, but this is just me putting my thoughts in the video. On top of that, there is the concept that even in our world itself, exterminating other religions is not anything new. Christianity did that to all types of religions that are now just considered mythology. Greek mythology, Roman mythology, Celtic mythology, Egyptian mythology, all those types of stuff. And the thing that I point out is that, okay, way back before Christianity, all of these other religions were perfectly valid religions. Yeah, they didn't necessarily always get along with each other, but they were perfectly valid religions for people to believe in. And for them, their gods and goddesses and stuff like that were not myths. They were legends. They were these deities that they worshipped and built huge temples to. And, coming from someone who is a Christian, and this is the season of Lent and everything like that, and I know that we're coming up on Ramadan, and I think Passover might be happening soon too, or may have just happened, depending on how that lands, and Easter is coming up and everything, that there is this whole thing that, yes, the world nowadays is mostly dominated by 3, 4, 5, 6-ish religions for the most part. When it comes to those who are religious, yes, there is a much larger faction of the world that has been growing and growing and growing, and being either atheist or agnostic, or just not have a religion at all, or not associate with a religion, and that's fine. But throughout the course of history, so many different countries and religions and stuff like that were wiped out simply because of the fact of Christianity and whatever other countries were associated with them, in attempts to appease the Pope or please whoever the Pope was at that point in time. We're like, okay, we're going to go on crusades, or we're going to settle this area, or we're going to do this, or we're going to do that, or we're going to do that. And that's kind of possibly what the world government did. I think Brenda wants back in. One moment. Hi, pretty girl. You're going to push me out of frame. Ah! Ah! You pushed me out of frame. How dare you? You pushed me out of frame. Yeah, cute Brenda. Good girl. Good girl. Up on the bed. Up on the bed. There you go. Lay back down. I have to go back to recording. I have to keep talking about a sun god and a rubber boy. We're kind of the same person at this point in time. My sister's actually downstairs talking to my mom right now, so that's why Brenda ran downstairs, because she's like, I want to go see my aunt. Actually, anyone who comes in the house, she's like, I have to sniff you and investigate you. So, yeah, Christianity and other countries and other religions have kind of done that to other countries and other religions in our world. So, the world government doing something similar in the One Piece world by either wiping out populations or forcibly basically getting rid of their gods or goddesses and their mythology or their religion, and then making it that, oh, this is actually just like a myth or something like that. It's been done in our world. Oda making reference to that in the One Piece world is not something that I would put past the man, because he's gone over a lot of other topics. On that note, I actually did a search on the Wikipedia page where you can look up like all of these different like sun deities and stuff like that. I was just like, let's see which ones have the most. So I didn't go through and count every single one for like, this one has one, this one has one, this one has two, this one has one, this one has three. That would have taken forever. I just kind of found the ones that had the most. So we have the Hindu gods have about 7 different gods that represent some aspect of the sun. Gods and goddesses that represent some different aspects of the sun. In Celtic mythology, there's about 10 of them that represent different aspects of the sun in some shape or form. In Egyptian mythology, there's 11 of them for all different variations of the sun. And the one that I found that had the most by leaps and bounds, I have to go down the list and count it twice to make sure I had the number correct, is the number of Filipino sun gods. So like the Indo-Pacific, the like Oceania, that area, the Philippines, that area. They had 26. Now, I don't know exactly if that means specifically different islands had different gods or different things like that, because there's like variations of that, because that's a lot of different areas being considered under one group. A lot of different islands and such like that were somewhat connected, but were also to a degree, largely separated by vast amounts of ocean. Could have had developed different sun gods and stuff like that, or different variations of similar gods and goddesses. And then there was one interesting one that just like popped up on the list when I was looking. So in Australia, there is the Australian Aboriginal sun goddess, Bila, B-I-L-A. I apologize if I mispronounced that, for anyone that knows the correct pronunciation of that. She is a cannibal sun goddess. And I'm like, no. No. That's just no. I'm like, okay, it's a good thing Luffy isn't that. That would be bad. That would be very bad. Although Luffy, sticking one of the gourds in his mouth, chewing him up and spitting him out as like a spitball would be kind of interesting, but he'd have to get very big. But like, no, Luffy wouldn't do that. That's possibly Big Mom's territory, which actually gives me a good segue into this next bit. So, in One Piece, we are told, this is what we learned during Big Mom's flashback to everything that happened on Elbaf when she was a kid, that the giants do worship a sun god. They do worship Elbaf, Elbaf the war god, but then they also have their sun god, which we've kind of determined is probably Nika. Given the way Dory and Groggy have reacted to showing up in the island, they're like, bring us sun god Nika, or bring us the sun god, or whatever the variation is of that they used. And we see that during their solstice festival that they intend to fast. So it's, first I think they have like this big feast, and then they're supposed to fast for like 12 days, And then they're going to have this huge feast again with all of the semla and everything like that. And as I went over in Big Mom's backstory, which I believe is the one that just went up this past Wednesday, where I talked about Big Mom's backstory, she does try. She fails, but she gets about halfway through, but she fails. And she, wreaks havoc and everything like that. And then, Mother Carmel uses her soul fruit to make Pandora out of the fire and everything like that. Side note to the side note. So I had been telling my mom a bit of this because I talked to her about One Piece and stuff like that. And she understands enough of what's going on to be able to watch the movies, because she saw Stampede with me, she saw Film Red, she's seen Strong World and Film Z and Film Gold and stuff like that. And some of the other bits, she's seen some of the episodes when I watch them and stuff. But I was telling her about Mother Carmel and Big Mom, and I had made the comment that Mother Carmel actually is like a child seller, and I'm telling her about this, and I've probably mentioned Big Mom's backstory to my mom in the past, but what happened was I'm telling her about Mother Carmel's backstory, and she goes, "I hope Big Mom eats her," and I'm like, well, you're not wrong. You're technically not wrong there. So yeah, I'm like, you hit that one on the nose there, Mom. Now, admittedly, as I said, I think I've told her about Big Mom in the past, but that doesn't mean that she remembers everything that I tell her about every single One Piece character. I'm still happy when she'll get something correct about something that I mentioned about a character that I haven't talked about for a while. But so we have that. So it's the giants honor their sun god by fasting. And in our world, lots of religions do that as well. I know that in the Islamic religion, that Muslims will fast during Ramadan. I believe it's from sun up to sundown. And then a few other religions do have that and stuff like that. I know that during Lent, a lot of Christians will give up something. Sometimes it's a certain type of a food. Sometimes it's a certain type of, a show or something else that they're not allowed to do. We're not allowed to have giving up swearing for Lent or something like that. And such. So it's that concept of fasting isn't all that concerning. The 12 days of it, on the other hand, is a little bit that's asking a lot of anyone, and that's asking a lot of children. That's just asking a lot. But what ends up happening, so they have that. But the thing that I wanted to point out is that, so that's how they honor their sun god. Luffy, who is the current embodiment of sun god Nika, is a freaking glutton and will just eat anything that is shoved in front of him. That will eat any food that gets put in front of him. Even if it's food that's for someone else, he will eat it. And we've seen this multiple times throughout the story. He literally just scarfed down anything that came out of the vending machine so that way he could now fight against Kizaru and Saturn again. And he, scarfed down all the food that Caribou had back in Wano before he went and fought Kaido again. And, all these other moments where he'll just, scarf down food and then go and fight someone. Because he's got his energy levels back up again. And, so we've seen that multiple times with Luffy, but it's just, he is a glutton. And although that's not his name, that's not his epitaph. The one with the epitaph of glutton is Bonnie, who is the daughter of, as far as we are aware, Nika's biggest supporter in the One Piece world right now. And it's she was raised on this, and she was raised on this concept of Nika and the sun god and everything like that. And she is this glutton. And that's just very antithesis to how the giants honor that. Admittedly, Bonnie isn't a glutton because of Nika. She's just a glutton because she's a glutton, and because Ginny had been this big eater and everything like that as well. So it's just there's that comparison to be made there. And literally one of the first things she does when her and Luffy and Chopper and Jinbei get a little more onto Egghead Island is they find the food vending machine and start getting food out of it and just start scarfing it all down. And that's just hilarious. And they all get angry over the fact that the food that they saw was a hologram, And then they go and find the real food. And it's just like, that's one of the things that her and Luffy and Chopper kind of do to start bonding. I mean, like, Jinbei kind of eats the food too. You get what I mean. But, so it's like, that's a way for them to start bonding and everything like that. And now Bonnie is having a current, reaffirmation of faith in the fact that Luffy is the sun god, and she's like, Nika, I've been searching for you for so long. And Luffy's just like, but I've been right here. And it's like, that's that whole kind of inner joke was like, because like in Christianity there's the Trinity, the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Like the Holy Spirit is supposed to be with us all the time, and then in this case it's like Bonnie has been like searching for Luffy her whole life, specifically so much for the past like 3 years after everything, trying to find her father and trying to find Nika at the same time and everything during her journey. And she's had this like unshakable faith in him until everything happened with Saturn, just in the last couple of minutes from her perspective. And Luffy is just now bouncing around as Nika, and he's like, yeah, I've been here the whole time. So it's just like, well, yeah, he's been by her side pretty much the whole time that they've been on the island, or a good chunk of the time that they were on the island, so there's that. But then it's also this whole concept of like, the spirit of Nika has been with Bonnie as well, because she's been carrying that with her. So I just kind of find that funny, in that regard. So there's all of that concept. And of course, so many people have pointed out the fact that like currently in One Piece in the manga, Vegapunk is getting, has this broadcast set to play all over the world, barring the Gorosei being able to interrupt it. And a lot of people are thinking that like, well, once it starts playing all over the world, and one of the things that may happen is that Vegapunk may be intending to, has like determined that like, okay, by a logical conclusion, that the ones who are going to be ending my life are most likely going to be the Gorosei, and or some variation of that on the orders of the Gorosei are going to be here to end my life. So what may happen is he may have the computer program to like play this recording that he's made with Shaka and Pythagoras. Some of the other satellites may roam in the frame or roam out. We'll see. And what may happen is it might cut to an actual part of the battle that's currently happening on Egghead. Like it's managed to like tap into some of the other Denmushi that are there, and the visual ones, and have them like relay that image as part of it, where they can actually show to the world what the Gorosei actually look like, but at the same time show the world Nika, show the world Luffy in this embodiment of Nika fighting against the Gorosei. Maybe not necessarily exactly, we as the audience may know that Luffy may be on the ropes at some point in time, but it may show them some of the other things, like splice together some of the stuff of like, Luffy turning Saturn into a pancake and throwing him, or into a symbol and then a pizza and then throwing him around, or like some of the other stuff that may happen. Show Kuma punching Saturn, something along those lines, or like maybe something in the system is designed to fix that, or maybe Edison or Lilith may hack into the system and be like, okay, we have to add in this footage so that way the world will see what's been happening here at Egghead. And that might be something that can be used to like fuel the fires of revolution in other countries and stuff like that, and maybe even cause other countries that were like on the verge of revolution to fully rebel and everything like that. And so there's a bunch of stuff for how that might come together. But what that may also do, and a lot of people are pointing this out, is the fact that part of Nika's power, as Luffy's power as Nika with his Toon Force abilities and everything else, part of that power may come from the belief that other people have in Luffy himself, but also in the Sun God. And, for all of Bonnie's life, she's been believing in Sun God Nika. And for Kuma's life, he's been believing in Sun God Nika. And even, like, the other people who lived on the island with them on Sorbet, who were, like, the elderly people, and the other ones that were their fishermen friends and stuff like that. Maybe even Bulldog and Connie, via association with Kuma, might be believers in Nika. And so there's that, but then there's this whole concept where there's this combination of things where it's like this belief in Nika and this belief in Luffy, because pretty much the whole story we've been seeing as Luffy goes from one place to another from, you know, he helped Kobe believe in himself, and like back in Fuchsia he's got like a whole town rooting for him, and Dawn and the Mountain Bandits and stuff like that up in, you know, up in the mountains, up in Mount Corbo and everything like that. They're all rooting for Luffy. So that's like belief in Luffy for what he can do. Even if, you know, even with Whoopslap being a grumpy old curmudgeon that he is, he still to a degree, I think, wants Luffy to succeed. And like, so there's that belief in Luffy. And then as you just go through from every single little bit that Luffy has gone through, like he helped Kobe start believing in himself when, you know, when they interacted, and then they got to Shell's Town, and like he's got Zoro there with him, and then kind of how Meppo gets pulled into that as well later on, because I think if it came down to it, Helmeppo would not kill Luffy even if he was ordered to. Same thing with like Kobe wouldn't do it either. Garp had such a hard time just dealing with Ace, and I don't think he would want to lose another grandson just because the Marines say so. Which is, I think, the reason why he went to, you know, why he went to Hachinosu in the first place, to save Kobe, because he already lost Ace, and he doesn't want to lose Kobe as well, as other kid who he's come to care for. But like, so we see a bunch of that, but like all the way through One Piece, all these other islands that the Straw Hats have stopped at and made allies on or friends on. Frick, throw in filler if you want, where they've made friends on other islands and helped them and everything like that, and even had a couple of Marines that believed in them, because like when they left Shell's Town, the Marines there were to a degree indebted to Luffy and Zoro for taking out Morgan, because he was a a-hole to all of them and a, you know, abusive boss, and it helped with that. And then even like other points in time where like they've seen like Smoker and Shishigi and all the G5 guys, they know that Luffy and the Straw Hats are not bad. And like all these other ones are seeing this. You get to see this at various points in time. And like it's kind of maybe making them think a little bit. Same thing with like Fujitora. You know, he knows that Luffy is not bad, and like Kizaru left, but not Kizaru, Kuzan left. You know, Aokiji left and everything with that. So there's that, but it's like Garp has faith in his grandson as well, as does, you know, as I said, Kobe and Helmeppo to a degree. Some of the other sword members, depending on stuff, may have some faith in this, depending on what happens. And then, like, just even back on Wano for the last arc, there was an entire island, an entire country rooting for, silently to a degree, rooting for the samurai to come back, for, you know, for the Kozuki clan to be restored and to get Orochi and Kaido out of there. And those dreams and wishes were brought to fruition through Luffy. And I know that when everything was happening during the climax of Wano, with like Luffy fighting Kaido and like all of the lanterns going up into the sky with all the names on it and everything, the names and wishes and everything, I know a lot of people thought that maybe something was going to happen where like those were going to combine with Luffy or something like that. He was going to draw on those, like those wishes and stuff like that, to then use that power to defeat Kaido. And I know that that's a possibility as well. I knew that that was like something that a lot of people had on as a theory there. You know, that's like the you know, this whole thing of like so many points of light in the darkness can, you know, push it away. You know, there is a light in the darkness and the darkness has not overcome it, type of a thing. And that is kind of what's been happening for the sun god Nika for the last 800 years, is like, as much as the world government and the Gorosei and the Tenryubito and Im have wanted to fully squish out these lights that represent Nika, that represent this god of liberation, this god of freedom, this god of joy and laughter, and all this other stuff that Luffy is being this embodiment of, all of them have been trying and trying and trying for generations possibly to smush out every little bitty bit that they can find so it's gone. But it keeps popping back up again. It keeps showing back up because it can't be extinguished, because you can't extinguish hope. And that has been shown time and time again throughout all of humanity as well. I mean, look at during World War II. Look at what happened there. People, even in the most horrible of situations, didn't give up hope. or they still tried to see the best in humanity, even when they were faced with the worst of it. And we saw that with Clap and Kuma, where Kuma and Clap and Kuma's mother had been made slaves by the world government. And, Clap finds out that his wife was killed, or that she died, or whatever the case was, and he tells Kuma. And then right after that, he tells Kuma about Nika. And then Kuma sees his father die. And, because he's shot by one of the Tenryubito, just for, being too loud or something. And it's this whole concept that again and again and again, they've tried to squish out this hope, this light, this thought of liberation, this bit of that idea of freedom. And again and again and again, it keeps coming back. Just like how the Gama Gama no Mi or the Hito Hito no Ni Mado Nika, whichever one you want to call it, both are correct. How again and again and again over the last 800 years, that one frickin' devil fruit keeps somehow evading the world government. There's probably been other users of it, and Luffy may have been possibly the only other one who has been able to awaken it, but over the last 800 years, there's been other people that have used it. And as long as they could track where it was, and they could track that the person who had it wasn't a threat, they were fine with it. But they start seeing Luffy as a threat when everything is happening at Wano. And they're like, okay, he's a threat now. And that's why they sent Joseph to deal with him. And well, Joseph technically succeeded, died, and then Luffy came back. So there's that. But, so it's like even the fruit tried to get away from them. It kept trying to run away from them as best it could by picking a place as far away from the Gorosei or as far away from the world government's control as it could to reincarnate it. And then it was in their grasp with Who's Who. And then Shanks shows up, defeats Who's Who and his group of CP agents, takes the fruit, takes it back to Fuchsia, and then Luffy eats it. And then it's just like, Shanks is just like, oh good God, help. Why did this happen? And then it's just like, but Luffy is the perfect person to have as this embodiment of Sun God Nika. And part of that is probably a catalyst based off of what the other part of Luffy's dream is. Because it's like, I want to become king of the pirates and then ... Whatever the case may be. That Sabo and Ace knew, that Yamato knows, and that now the Straw Hats know. And it's that concept there that's like, that other part might be the thing that made the devil fruit choose Luffy. Made it choose to like lure Luffy in to eat it, or whatever the case may be. Or Luffy ate it. And that may have been the other thing that like, because Shanks said that Luffy said the same thing that Roger said, or that he talks the way that Roger used to talk. And that's what he told to Rayleigh, and that's one of the reasons why Rayleigh chose to train Luffy. And like, Shanks has seen the way that Luffy is, and has seen Luffy grow even when he was a little kid at Fuchsia Village for the time frame that Shanks was there. And then of course, he bet his arm on the next generation. I'm like, dude, yeah. In the short term, I understand why they did it. In the long run, it just makes Shanks look like an idiot. That he lost his arm because of that. But there's all of that concept of like, this, more and more people have built their faith in Luffy. And put their faith in this silly little rubber boy who is this glutton for food. And will do everything he can to help people around him who he likes. Or even people who have done nothing wrong to him, he will do what he can to help them. He helped save Dressrosa because Rebecca gave him food. He helped save Wano because Tama gave him food. Admittedly, he was going to help save Wano anyway because of Momonosuke and everything like that. Side note to this side note, I love the fact that in the English dub for One Piece, because I'm just getting to the point where I'm watching the Momonosuke get turned into the grown-up form, and he's like flying around and everything like that as the grown-up dragon. I am so happy that they have Justin Briner playing adult Momonosuke, because I'm like, Izuku got turned into a dragon. And that made me so happy. So happy. And he has a connection to Zoro too, which is just extra funny because Chris Sabat is the English dub of Zoro, so All Might. So I just find that so funny and so hilarious and so perfect. So I wanted to point that out because I find it so funny. And there wasn't really any other place for me to put that because I'm not going to be talking about Momonosuke for a while. But so like that's why Luffy's doing this. And then like by a technicality, like Vegapunk gave Luffy food, and the fact that Luffy and Bonnie and Chomper and Frankie found, or not Frankie, Jinbei found the food machine, and that was made by Vegapunk, and now he's trying to help Vegapunk. So it's just like, yeah, food's involved here a lot, but it's also like Luffy, you know, there's the whole concept of what's the other half of Luffy's dream, and that's possibly part of why the devil fruit works so well with Luffy, because he has that childlike imagination, and that's why Bonnie is able to then, or was able to tap into that imagination in her own devil fruit to be able to, you know, have her Nika-ish type future and stuff like that. When she fought against Alpha and different you know, and tried to fight against Saturn and like done some other stuff over the years, probably over the time frame. And now that she's seen Luffy as Nika, that faith can be reaffirmed, and she can then use that faith as a way to bolster her own power. Definitely not get as strong as Luffy in that regard, but bolster her own power to help. And the whole concept of like having that power of belief spread all over the world, where they can see, you know, where the world can learn about Sun God Nika from like Vegapunk, who probably heard some of it from, you know, from Kuma, from either Kuma's memories or from talking to Kuma in and of himself. She's like this. She's staring at the shade like it offended her. I was going to show them you looking offended at a shade. Her. It offends me. Mommy, open the door. Fine, I'll open the door. Okay, fine. You're back. Do you want to go out or not? Do you want to go out the door? Or, no, I want you to pet me. You have a belief in the sun god Nika, and I have a belief in Mommy. So pet me. Yeah, I know. I love you. I clean your eyes. You're a good girl. You're a good girl. But there's that whole concept of like spreading that all over the world at the same time, with Vegapunk's message, that can be a very good way of doing that. Focus the camera back in. And like a lot of people are making the comparison to that could be something similar to like what happens in Peter Pan, when, you know, the I do believe in fairies, I do that happens in Peter Pan when he's trying to save Tinkerbell. It happens a lot in the play, or it's designed to be in the play specifically and in the story. Disney didn't really do that too much in the original, in the Peter Pan one that they did, but there's other ones where they've done that a lot more, where it's this whole chorus throughout all of it of like, I do believe in fairies, I do, and that's what brings Tinkerbell back. Also in Disney canon, I do believe that it is the first laugh of a baby that can be used as like the source for like where a fairy comes from. And I'm like, there might be something in there. Nika likes to laugh a lot, or Luffy likes to laugh a lot. So there's like that connection there, that like if enough people all around the world have this belief in Luffy, then that could give him, or in Luffy and in the Sun God, then that can give Luffy more power. Because it's touching people all over the world that Luffy himself has not personally interacted with. But if they have this ability to see him fighting against these demonic Goros, say, and protecting Vegapunk, or protecting something along with the context of like what Vegapunk might say in his message, then that might be enough to rally more people behind Luffy and more faith in Luffy. In some variation of that. So there's that connection there. And I had I had two more things for this. So one, also on that same note of like people all over the world contributing power. In Sailor Moon, because I am a Sailor Moon dork, there's in the 4th season of Sailor Moon, the climax of the series, or of the season, they have to fight against Queen Nehelenia, who is like this queen of the Dead Moon Kingdom. And Eventually, when I get to doing Sailor Moon stuff, she'll get like a whole video of her own because she is a very interesting character. But there is this crystal that is called the Golden Crystal of Dreams. And in order to power the crystal, you have to have a quote-unquote great dream, according to her. And if you don't have a great enough dream, then you can't power the crystal. And what ends up happening is they have to fight against her. They get the Sailor Scouts, Sailor Moon gets her hands on the crystal, and then via, Rini or Sailor Mini Moon, kind of using the power of the crystal to talk to like all of Japan, if not all of the world, because I don't think it's ever specified if it's all of the world or if it's just Japan that she's talking to at that point in time. That she is able to have all of them share their dreams to the power of the silver crystal, to the power of the golden crystal, and that allows them to actually defeat Nehelania. So it's this combination of like combining all of this stuff together in order to fight, Nehelania, who is like this representative of like the dark side of the moon, whereas Serena's mother, Queen Serenity, is, the light side of the moon, or the good side of the moon. I guess that would make Nehelania a Pink Floyd fan. Maybe, I don't know. But so there's like that concept there of like being able to combine this power together, of like, combining everybody's power. So there's that. And then I have one last thing that I wanted to point out here. So in regards to, a lot of people keep talking about like what the name of the ancient kingdom could be. And a lot of people are like, oh, maybe it's something related to like Kaizuko, for like pirates or something along those lines. Or something that would be a big connection that like, oh, if all the world hears it at the same time, it'll be this like light bulb moment all over the world at the same time of like, oh, that's what that means type of a thing. Or that's what that's meant to all these past years or something like that, or something instantly makes sense. Because like the Gorosei didn't even want Clover to say the name of the kingdom to the CP9 agents that were there on Ohara and when they had him shot. Just before Clover could say the name of the ancient kingdom. And so there's that whole concept there that just like they have to be scared of that name. And that just made me think of like in Harry Potter, there's of course Voldemort, who is of course known as He Who Will Not Be Named, or You Know Who, or as Harry just likes to tauntingly refer to him as Tom Riddle, because that's his name. What Harry, there's the whole concept of what Hermione says, and I think it's in the second book and in the second movie, she's like, fear of a name only increases fear of the thing itself. And, so it's just like the name Voldemort in the wizarding world, specifically in the British wizarding world, is this terrifying thing that for so many years was just this scourge against the British wizarding population. And he caused so much harm and so much damage and so much death and pain and everything like that, that everybody just didn't want to say his name. Also, there was a taboo on the name that if you said the name, it would break any protective wards or any spells or something like that around you. And it would be able to call whoever to you, like the ministry or something, to you for some variation. So it was a way for like Voldemort to like track people, or for... It was a taboo on the name, and then they did the same thing later on in book 7, and that's why Hermione, Harry, and Ron never say Voldemort's name, and they are then reduced to referring to him as You Know Who at that point in time. As like a flip for the fact of like through the whole series, Harry has not been afraid of saying the name, and Hermione has been, at least for the past 2 books, much less reluctant to say the name. She will say Voldemort's name. But other wizarding children, Neville, Ron, the Weasleys, all of that, will not say, or did not want to say Voldemort's name, because they were raised under this whole concept of like being terrified of the name. And the world government, specifically the Gorosei and Eam, seem to have this concept of being terrified of whatever, well, terrified of sun god Nika in general, but also terrified of like the name of whatever the ancient kingdom was. And, not being able to say it, or not wanting other people to say it, because it could lead to something that is a lot more rebellion than they want to deal with. I'm wearing a Hunger Games shirt today, and it's appropriate because it has Katniss on it. that, like, she's the spark for the rebellion that happens in Hunger Games. She is this kind of, she's the Mockingjay, this figurehead for what happens for the whole rebellion against the Capitol in the Hunger Games, in the last book and a half, or the last 2.5 movies, and such. So it's that whole concept of, like, there is this spark of rebellion that can come, and for the world government in One Piece, for the Gorosei and for the Celestial Dragons, it's this terrifying thing of, whatever the ancient kingdom used to be called, which could connect back to the Will of D, which I'm sure someone's made that comment before, that it could be like the Will of D, maybe something where it's like that's part of the ancient kingdom's name, is that it has D as like the first letter or something like that, and that's why there's this connection there, and this connection to Joy Boy and everything like that, and then like his descendants, or the descendants of those who are around him, passed on the D as part of their name down through all the different generations, to Law, to Luffy, to Rouge, to Ace, to Roger, to Garp, to Dragon, to Teach, to the ones who like have, to Saul, who have the Will of D in their name. And then there's other ones who like embody the Will of D in regards to like Odin very much embodied the Will of D, and other ones, Bonnie and Kuma, have very much embodied the Will of D, even if they don't hold that as part of their name. They very much embody that concept of like bringing freedom to the world in some variation. And Pedro, Pedro to a degree had the Will of D, even if he didn't actually, letterize in his name have it. Pedro D. Leopard, Jaguar, whatever he was, Pedro. And so there's like that whole concept there for like, they're terrified of this name, and terrified of what it will mean if the world finds out about the name, and where that could lead, and what type of uprisings and rebellions and stuff like that they could have on their hands at that point in time. And a good chunk of their naval fleet's kind of getting wiped out right now on Egghead. Or at least a good chunk of their naval fleet in the New World is getting wiped out on Egghead right now because of the Pacifistas, and the Mark IIIs and such, and the Giants, with them coming into play. And so there's that whole problem there. And, as Mihawk said, when it came to Luffy has the power to turn enemies into allies. It's like, that's what he did to a degree when it came to, blanking. I mean, like, Frankie started off as an enemy. Same thing with Robin. Nami technically was an antagonist, given everything that happened in the Arlong Park arc and such. And there's other cases where Luffy, like, he technically got, Tashigi and Smoker and the G5 guys on his side, him and his crew's side, with everything that happened on Punk Hazard because of the kids and everything. So there's like this whole concept where like Luffy is able to make enemies into allies. And like he did that with Crocodile and Buggy when everything that happened in Impel Down, and Mr. 3 and Breaking Out and all of that stuff. And so this whole thing of like being terrified of the name, and it could be, in a reference that I'm going to make to Doctor Who here, it could be something very similar to like the Doctor's name in Doctor Who, where it's something that has bin hidden in plain sight the entire time, whereas Doctor Who has been around for like 60 some years at this point in time, and it's coming up on 70 soon, and it's or it has been 70, one of the two. I think last year the 70th anniversary, I don't remember. But like this concept of like the Doctor's name, what is the Doctor's name? And to the Daleks and to other races all over the galaxy and the universe, they're terrified of the Doctor, of just being referred to as the Doctor. Whereas it's like, that's not even his full name. It's something else that we don't know, or we may never know. And it's the secret. And, the secret of the ancient kingdom, part of it might lie in its name beyond just its location. And there's that whole concept that gets done there. And I'm going to finish this on the last note that I wanted to make is a reference back to Harry Potter, because I'm a dork. In Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, specifically in the movie, I don't believe they do this in the book, but specifically in the movie, there is the scene that's after the end of the battle at Hogwarts. At that point in time, the battle where Dumbledore is killed at the beginning of it by Snape, and then it's the Death Eaters running through the castle and causing damage and everything like that, and then they escape, and Snape escapes with them. And it's the scene of the movie where they have all of the students and the teachers, finding Dumbledore's body at the bottom of the astronomy tower. And up in the sky, over the school at that point in time is, the dark mark, the Morse Mordo mark, the skull with the snake coming out of it and everything like that, the green skull and snake in the air over Hogwarts to represent the fact that a death happened here at the hands of a Death Eater. And in this case, it's representing Dumbledore. And what happens in the movie is, I think it starts, it might start with McGonagall, but I think like Hermione and Ron join in, and eventually it's like all of the students joining in and the staff joining in, where they're all raising their wands. Hold on, I'll grab a wand. I have wands. Give me a second. Talking about McGonagall. Do I have McGonagall? There it is. I'm referencing McGonagall, and I have McGonagall's wand. Where, all of the, the students that are there and the teachers that are there and the other staff that are there, they all have their wands, and they all start raising them, and they all start glowing at the top. I don't know if it's supposed to be Lumos, but it's, whatever similarity of that, and it's like they're all raising it high into the air as, as Dumbledore is lying there, and Harry's closed his eyes and everything, and they're all raising their wands, and they're all making this light glow from their wands that is making an adjacent light appear inside of the dark mark that's flying that's hovering in the sky above the castle. That is this representation of evil, and they are each bringing this little bit of light into it that is enough to, all of them combined are able to get rid of this dark mark in the sky. And it doesn't mean that the war is over. It doesn't mean that everything goes back to normal. It doesn't mean that everything's okay. It just means that for that moment there is this representation of like this light, even small bits of light working together to overcome this darkness. And Dumbledore, as much as I have my issues with Dumbledore, there's always this concept of, where there is darkness, there is light. Darkness will always find a way to overcome, or light will always find a way to overcome the darkness. And that can be something where it can be in regards to, in this case, against Voldemort, in other cases against the Dementors that Harry has to deal with and the school has to deal with in book 3, and other points where you have to use the Patronus and summon joy in order to take down take down the Dementors and everything. So this video ended up being longer than I anticipated it being, but that's where my brain works when it comes to like going whatever other else you want to go with. Just like pensive, pull out some memories out of my mind. But there's that, that concept of like this light that is this representation of the sun god, that Luffy is now this representation of, that can be used to spread all over the One Piece world and not destroy the world government, because that's not what needs to be done. It's fix the world government. It's get rid of the Tenryubito at the top. It's get rid of the Gorosei at the top. It's get rid of Imsama at the top. And fix the world so that way people can be free again. So they're not just at the behest of the world government, that they are allowed to live because they are useful to the world government. It's no, they deserve the right to live and to make their own choices, and to not be starving, and to not be poor, and to not be, ostracized just because of their race or whatever variation of it you want to go with. And, the way that the fishmen are to the world as a whole, or even other races in regards to the long arm, or the long leg, or the snake neck, or the giants, or the three-eyed tribe, even though Pudding is the only one we've seen of that, and she's only a hybrid. um, and so many different variations of that. And the Lunarians, having them being able to come back to a degree, or some other variations of that, where you shouldn't be, the One Piece wants to, Luffy doesn't care about that stuff. He doesn't care what someone's race is. He cares about who they are on the inside, and how good of a cook they are, or how useful they can be to him as a friend. But that's not the way that Luffy's mind works. Food, yes. I mean, if you're a good cook, Luffy's going to be a little bit better of like, okay, fine, I'll let you, I'll see, and I'll talk with you and see what's going on here because you're going to feed me. But you get what I mean. So that's what I have. I thank you very much for watching and listening to my rambling. And I hope you have a nice rest of your day. Bye.